Well, there was many a morning I was in here at 7:30. Getting ready for 4:15.
Yeah.
I don't miss that.
That class used to be in the morning.
Yes, it used to be from 8 until 11 or something like that.
Yeah. It's like 2:30 to 5, thinking out right now, 2:30 to 5:30.
Well,
we're done by like 4:30-ish was this.
you're looking at the 12Z data then.
Yeah.
I was looking at 0Z data.
Yeah.
Or 6Z, something like that. Most of the time the 6Z would be in. But yeah, it was always a intriguing because at that time things are a lot smoother now, but sometimes the projector would go out.
Oh, that still happens. You'll see. It'll
Like-
probably like go out or something.
Yeah,
It
would
Same one.
It would happen. It would just kind of flake out, and
Does that now? It'll just go black for a second and then come back.
fortunately, everybody had their own, with everybody had their own desk.
Yeah. Yeah.
So-
that definitely helps.
You're able to bring it up, or okay?
Yeah, it should be up there.
Okay.
You can pull up any tabs you want.
All right.
The broadcast is going. Maybe
Yeah.
a couple people that come to there.
Sure.
Um,
I'll go to the email at least.
yeah, take your time.
Thanks.
I mean, it's not what they have to do, but I'm gonna really try actually. When I get some stuff done, because I don't wanna leave this hanging. I don't wanna do any of it on break. The plate go
Guys, Drake's coming to the beach this year.
That's
Crazy. That's crazy.
We're finally I don't know, like now we're getting all these artists, because Friday with Travis Scott.
I know.
And one of my friends, they were really shocked, oh shit. And now I want to, now Dennis is just going to be great, I'm going to be here. You know?
Oh, yeah, you'll be.
Oh, you'll be there.
I'm saying, honest.
You are? I'm gonna hear this. You're taking some. Yeah. I got happy today. That actually sounds cool. I didn't know that. Where you going?
Barcelona.
What are you studying?
Nothing media.
I just like waiting though.
I like this. Ever since I came to Penn State, I wanted to study abroad for a semester, so I like worked really hard to make sure bring meteorology classic out of next semester, because it's pretty much the only one that you can, like, spring semester, sophomore year for media people is like the easiest.
I agree.
To study abroad. So,
There's another media major saying about too.
so, yeah.
No?
Oh, yeah, there's 3 this year, yeah.
Jackie. Yeah, Jackie's thinking about in some, I can't remember, but I heard that she's thinking abroad.
Do you know where?
No, some place.
Oh, I think it's England.
England, yeah, England, that's what she told
Yeah.
me.
So cool. You know, this is the first semester since COVID that we've had any media major study abroad. Yeah.
Crazy, I've heard no, cause that's actually so cool that everyone's like, no, it's
So
like.
it can't be done, guys. It can't be done.
Oh my gosh, my schedule cannot study abroad for that. My schedule cannot.
I'm actually, I can't.
I'm so happy for you
Yeah.
though. You did everything and you could deal yourself to the moment.
Yeah, exactly. So.
I'm actually kind of
Yeah, but I'll be taking the Spanish class, the Gen Ed Arts, like a class I need for a certificate I'm doing, and then 2 classes for my geography.
Oh, okay, then you're gonna get some,
Yeah. One of them, I guess, like, cause I think technically in the general option, you can't 300 geography courses count. I think like specific ones can.
yeah, I just like this.
One of the ones I'm taking, like, it has some meteorology unit in it. So I guess like worst case, if like, whatever doesn't work out.
Yeah, there's like a meteorology unit in, so like you have a certain amount. Hey, that's awesome. Yeah, are you excited?
I'm so excited. Yeah. Alright, bye guys.
Bye, Weston.
See you around.
That's so cool. They would run. I always want to say about running. Oh no. Oh. No, I can't type today. So. And- Let's test this out. It's done.
I felt that it was very timely with you making guest appearances today, that the joy has returned.
Oh, yes, and the cups, yes. I got my first bit of joy on Saturday.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. It's exciting, isn't it?
It is.
I know, this has been the.
Applebee brought in something.
Mr. Drum.
He was the president, can't swim.
Oh, yeah.
How's it going?
Good, nice to see you.
Oh, yeah, just pretty deep.
When you get back.
I got back to state college yesterday, we flew back, get back to my daughter's house, that is the evening of Saturday. Would it look better if you was able to?
That's nice, isn't it?
Yeah.
I was.
So I had a selection of different, I could go to Midway and pay a little bit.
Yeah, well,
It's better running.
Oh.
It's running the day that wide. But that way, it's like running here.
And then they see when that's happening.
I
I gotta make sure you ever.
Okay. Let's get a hotel or just.
Wow. So we have a like.
Things are going up now. That's good.
So.
You're a fly, it's like, my cheater fly.
Wow, you know, I mean, I'm not big for. We would want to. It's a monitor. First. But I would say I get that.
That's 11.
No way.
It's a 3D clock light. So. Yes.
Get one more red flag. I think you want the red flag to like, so like.
This area has
Big players.
Yeah.
It's like.
That's northwest.
So it's going to Pittsburgh, I think.
No, yeah, just nice eyes.
His brother. I've been there 2007. They're driving.
Oh.
CRV.
Oh, she doesn't like the idea.
Okay. The boys were really good at it. We went 3 miles down the first day. And then, the red trail. We stayed at Arlington. So it worked.
Yeah,
That's.
that's next closest.
It's just outside of Sunset, it says, we stayed in West Side, we stayed.
I didn't get, I like red spider, but I actually like spider better than red. No,
We stayed in Flagstaff.
What's that one?
Oh, yeah. And I'm not like, the kid, I'll say, wow, what
But I'm not nervous about it, even if they're higher down, like, but there's not one.
Is that right?
There's a whole thing.
Oh, really?
I thought that they didn't think about it.
It's not, they still play around with that.
That thing, you mean, is.
Yeah.
Sorry, not the thing that thing that we have.
They looked at this like.
Is that right?
He went on to be a astronomer.
Which is good.
He built his own telescope, applied for the job, and his job.
He ended up running a little
And
bit.
then he took us, they showed up, that telescope, he was in, that telescope. And then,
I'm back.
so we went down to that hotel, we went down there.
Anyway, I looked.
So we came back when it's dark, and then they had like, whole blacked out up there, and then I had like telescopes outside there. And then they had a big telescope that was giant.
It's like I was just.
You can see Saturn, rings.
But it's like, it's not like it's going to drive before I go there.
I look at this, they make train stations, they usually on the trains. But this was the train by the Irving County.
Then we got home.
I don't even know, that was a mess up. I'll tell you.
Yeah.
It was, I mean,
You gotta,
Yeah.
nobody did
it's
it.
not,
Wasn't
yeah,
that?
Colorado, it's stuff. I'm all over the place. It's not bad.
Well, what are you going to? Yeah.
The weekend after Thanksgiving.
Ah, okay. Well, hey, I see that. Well, hopefully, it feels like I can get something next week.
I'm glad to hear.
Oh, okay.
Sorry.
Not yet.
They were so on the ball.
We were at the time of school, I did not have time to nice. No, I.
Oh, that was the best one.
First game was a turnover. Second game was like that. He,
And then projected on.
Yeah.
It's good. Nah, let me just share the screen. So
Sure, yes.
How's your planning going?
Well, I fixed a big problem. I had some school break up.
We fixed the home too, we still have some problems. But I'm glad we got, what did we get? What do you get that from? Oh, okay, I think I know what you're talking about. Yeah. It's a challenging project, so I'm glad that,
Hey, what's up?
Yeah.
Cool. Alright, hello everyone, welcome to this week's briefing, thanks for coming out, last briefing for Thanksgiving break. So no briefing next week, but yeah, hopefully everyone's hanging in there for break next week. I'm happy to have one man here today, who is the former PhD climatologist, co-founder of Weather World. So thanks for coming in, Paul, and feel free to introduce yourself more if you want, and take it away whenever you're ready.
Thank you very much, Chris. You're too kind. Thanks for coming, and I know that this is it's an act of real kindness to be here because the weather is so freaking boring. This is really bad stuff. So what I did, I'm going to be hitting on a lot of different subject matter, because the weather's going to take us about 90 seconds to talk about what it'll be for the next couple of days. I included on this, and before I get to use my pointer, which I didn't do for the discussion last week, snow forecast, is this is actually a barometer that's in my room at home. And I brought it because I thought, well, this summarizes what it's going to be like for the next four days at least. That's going to be fair and dry. And it's quite high. It was 30.50. I can't say it's exactly calibrated, but relatively speaking, the pressure has been pretty high. Hey, this week is the celebration of the anniversary 55 years ago is when Sesame Street went on to was birthed on PBS. And there's all of our favorite characters. I'm delighted that they're still around. Now it was a little bit after my years. What's that? Yeah, no. They should be on Social Security, yeah. Certainly Big Bird could use it. But yeah, this was 1969 or 68, I guess it was. Maybe that they became an entity on public television. Also, as no doubt, I think John did a feature last week, or redid a feature on the wreck of the Edmund Fitzgerald, because that was a few days earlier than today, the 13th. And of course, rest in peace, Gordon Lightfoot, because the singer that made it so famous passed away earlier this year. But it was not really that. I mean, it was a heck of a storm, so I'm not going to diminish it. But at least according to the analysis, it was a 984 low near the Kinawa Peninsula, and it did deepen a bit. And of course, the ship took a track through one of the worst places it could go with regard to a rapidly deepening Great Lake cyclone. But 984, heck, we've seen some stronger ones than that. I think it was just a couple of years ago we had one that was down around 972 or 970. Few other things to catch up on is, of course, our friends in New Orleans have had some real challenges because the fact that the salt intrusion from the Gulf has been steadily marching up the Mississippi River, besides making it troublesome for the barges to be able to move and get their goods offloaded in New Orleans. The water in New Orleans is actually, the US Army Corps of Engineers have had to actually bring in huge tubs of water to be able to help, and that's what they're doing here. They're actually putting extra water in, fresh water, to be able to keep the salt intrusion from getting into the water system in New Orleans. But and of course, the percent normal precipitation in the past 2 months has been really pittance down there. It's like the order of 18 or 20%. But the forecast from the NAC or NAC, anyway, HPC, yeah, is actually forecasting of order of 1.5 or 2 inches of rain in the next day or two, which is good news. Now, of course, that's not going to solve all the problem, but it does look like it's the beginning of the march of the southern branch storms with this El Nino pattern that we're in. So good news for the folks in New Orleans. Not so good news for the people in the Panama Canal. If you've been following any of the news about that, the record low precipitation and lowest ever, I guess, in the month of October since 1950. And so far this year ranks as the second driest year on record in Panama. It's primarily around Lake Butana, I think it's pronounced. I'm not positive about that, but it's one of these things where the water from the lake is fed in to be able to change the water level in the locks as the ships go through. But it's actually a bit of a problem, and it's slowed the traffic down. And in a country like Panama, which this is the big revenue, that is the traffic going through the Panama Canal, that any reduction is going to be having a big influence on their society too. So anyway, that's kind of an interesting thing. I had the privilege of actually driving under the Suez Canal a couple of weeks ago, but that's a whole different story that I may have time to talk about. AMS sends out a weekly newsletter called News You Can Use. I think it's NYU, something like that. Did you ever read this? And anyway, so this one came out, which is kind of weird. And I thought, well, I'll read it anyway. It was from MIT, and it was a research that was done that indicates that at least for hydrogel, which is a different form of water that has some I'm not exactly sure what phase you would call it in, but anyway, that water can evaporate just from light alone, and not from heat. And this has been triple checked, so it's not something that was like bogus, like for example the air temperature or room temperature fission, which has turned out to be an unfortunate guffaw in terms of the research from Rochester Institute, but this was kind of fascinating. And if indeed it holds up, it'll actually do a little number on our thermodynamics regarding the evaporation of water over the oceans, which of course 70% of the earth is that.
But don't we as meteorologists have a problem with the wording there? I mean, this implies,
Yeah.
I mean, light, are they separating the visible part of the spectrum? Is that what light means here?
No, they're doing the whole, not just visible.
But
yeah, no, there's heat in that as well too.
the heat of light.
Yeah,
I mean,
yeah.
I mean, the headline makes me want to vomit.
Yeah.
I mean,
Well, I'm sorry, John. We do have a.
I'm sorry. Those of you in front of me here. I'm sorry. The headline is horrible.
Yeah, it's poorly written for sure. But I read it and I said, huh? So we'll see if it gains any traction in terms of its credibility. But it may very well be on the room temperature fission scope. But for those of you that are regular forecasters, it's finally happened that Sioux City, Iowa has owned up to their unbelievably bad name as an airport, and they actually are capitalizing on that. So that there's all sorts of businesses going on in Sioux City that are saying how we're sucks, and it's kind of funny to see this. This was an article that was in the Wall Street Journal about a week ago. So if you all ever wondered about the place that really sucks, it is indeed Sioux City, Iowa. All right, so the key points I'm going to talk about, having gone through this silliness, is the major anticyclogenesis that's going on this week. A high's just departing now, a new high will come in, that high will get rejuvenated as the week goes on, and then of course it'll eventually go away. But that's why the Z's are out, because it's really kind of boring. It's going to, simply put, it's going to be dry. That's the easiest part about this. With some sun most days, which in this time of the year when we're down to, I think, 9 hours and 58 minutes of daylight today, every time you can get some sunshine, it's good for us. And I do see a slow warming trend. This morning, I think, Bill, what was it at the weather station here? The min
26.
26. Okay, I know it was 22 at Bill's place in Bollesburg, and also at my house. John, did you have? You had 22?
22.
Yeah, so it was a pretty uniform 22. This I think is the bottom for a while. I mean, not for forever, but certainly for at least the next 5 days. It shouldn't get that cold. Next chance of rain is coming on Friday. We'll look at the actual maps and do stuff like that. And of course, it looks like a brisk day for the game against the Scarlet Knights with a new offensive coordinator. What's that?
2 guys. Offensive coordinators.
Coordinator? Oh, they lost the both?
No, they're gonna let them share the
Interim at least, playing duties.
Oh, is that right?
Yeah.
Okay, I didn't read the whole story, so. Oh, interesting. Okay. Well, yeah, it does seem, well, lots of things that do knee-jerk reactions these days. So,
You gotta escape.
so with a big high, I thought, well, let me look back. Maybe there's something historic about this, about large high pressure systems. So the earliest journal article I could find was about a great anticyclone in the winter time of 4950 in the North Pacific. And this was actually written by Jerome Namias. And Namias is a name that goes way back in the early days of weather prediction. He was he was with the Weather Bureau, but then I think he also ended up at Scripps. Does that sound about right? Yeah, I think so. Anyway, this is more looking at a big high. Actually, it was really an upper level high. 700 millibars is where a lot of the research was initially done back in the early 70s or early 50s. And then I thought, well, let's look at something more recent. And here are some of the, Lance Bossart in the middle is probably the most notable person. But he and 2 of his colleagues did a study up in University at Albany about closed anticyclones in the subtropics and mid latitudes. And they did a nice 50+ year climatology and some case studies. But this is once again looking at upper level highs rather than surface highs. So I thought, well, we're really looking at surface high here. So what's the story here? And I decided to bring up the record high pressures, at least in the modern era. And this was the one I believe was on Christmas Day or Christmas Eve, 1983. There's also another big one back in the 60s. Also, I think it was 68. But we're maxing out around 1060 is close to the highest pressure that you'll see in the U.S. Now, Pennsylvania.
It was brutal in Illinois.
Here, yeah, it was 11 below in Chicago and 8 below in Springfield. So yeah, of course, these are always associated with fantastic cold waves too. And this one I don't remember. This one pretty brutal too. Yeah, this was 16 below Springfield, and I can't believe it. 23 below in Chicago.
It seemed like I was in Paxton, like, what do you do with it? You never got above zero in like 36 hours.
Yeah.
I think it went to about -20.
Yeah, well, this was a dandy because it was heck, it was 10, 15 or 16 in San Antonio. But so if we're going to have record high pressure, we're probably going to also have to deal with the issue of record cold too. And we're not in that regime anymore, at least not in recent times. So here's where we're at today, with regard to the normal high 50, normal low 34. I'm looking at this column here. It has been as high as 76 on this day, of course, not getting close to that, and as low as 13. So our 22 or 26 is a lot closer to the record low. So we're certainly going to end up below average today, if only because the min's going to take us so far down. Any comments, Bill, you want to make about the almanac to this point?
That's just a one.
I'm just bored. The weather.
Did Ben make a comment?
1911 looked real unfortunate.
Yes.
More than 13.
Yeah, and yet that was not even, if you look at the record snowfall, I think it's down here, is that right? We had 22.5 inches of snow in 1968 at this point. So there was one doozy of a snowstorm. They had 13.8 on this day, right? In 1968.
Well, that 1911, this would have been a couple days after the famous Daily Double episode. When places had their record high and record low on the same day because the cold front was so powerful.
11. That's right. Yeah. Well, it's possible to be able to get big snows also this time of the year. Although I think they're pretty rare. 68 was a dandy of a storm. And
95 the last big snow here in November.
pardon,
1995 the last big
November storm. Yeah, that was and that was about a week later.
We had a foot in November a couple years ago.
Oh, did we?
First time we're leaving
2018 got 11 12.
Oh, sorry. Okay, all right. So it happens, I guess, episodically. Temperature wise, we continue to be mild. If I did my count correct, and Bill can check me out on this one, I only counted 22 of the past 73 days with below normal temperatures. That sounds yeah. So about 30% of the time it's been below. So therefore 70% has been above. And I guess we are running a bit of a deficit for the autumn to date of 2.8 inches below seasonal levels. But I think year to date, we're just what, an inch or two below normal.
Yeah.
Yeah. So nothing too dramatic there. I'll refer, I really like to do this because whenever I have an opportunity to give a discussion, I like to remind folks about the Snellman funnel. Len Snellman was I think he was the director of the Western region of the Weather Service. Yeah, okay. And I never met him personally. Did you ever?
Many times.
Amazing. Okay. All right. I talked to him on the phone.
He worked when I was at NSC, which now is
Yeah.
He worked with us for 7 or 8 years.
Okay.
We're getting old.
Yeah. Well, yeah, I bent his ear for at least a few times a week for a couple of weeks when we were forecasting for Mount Everest. And he gave us some really good tips. But Len came up with this, and this was really understood beforehand. He was the one who kind of codified it and talked about, the idea that in order to get a good feel for the weather in a discussion, probably want to start on the largest scale and then just keep zooming down on the local scale. And I kind of jumped ahead with the local scale by looking at the current or the expected averages here. Big scale, planetary scale, at least I should say hemispheric scale. This was the analysis from about a day or so ago, and at least from what I can tell, and I'm open to discussion about this. I counted about 4 long waves, 4 Rossby waves in the northern hemisphere. Maybe there's a 5th one. I mean, generally, it likes to be, in the warm season, it can be anywhere from 5 to 7. In the cold season, it generally ends up being around 3. And we are still in the transition season. This was the forecast from a day or so ago, and it doesn't look like an enormous amount of change expected with regard to the position of the long waves at 240 hours from now. So, I do think there's going to be some substantial changes with regard to the pathway of short waves, but the long waves still look like.
Is that a model on the right, or is that a ensemble?
This one here, yeah, that's a model. That's the GFS or GEFS, so. With regard to MJO, because MJO can sometimes be a mover of the southern train of short waves. It looks like it stays kind of in the zone over by November, by the way, is in green, so it's way over here. It's between 8 and 1, and that would be in the far, let's get my directions right, western Indian Ocean, not too far from East Africa. So where it has actually been a lot of the time recently. So nothing exciting going on there. Obviously, the big news is, I love that sound. Sounds like somebody's flushing a commode. The multivariate ENSO index, MEI, this is the latest version, obviously shows us early on in the beginning of a El Nino, and the yesterday or 2 days ago sea surface temperature anomaly shows this warm pool expanding across the tropical Pacific. What's curious about it is the debate is going on. Is it going to be a East Pacific ENSO? Is it going to be a Central Pacific ENSO? And will there be a Modoki component to it? That is, a reflection of it, perhaps in the southern hemisphere too. It's still debatable, but the big thing is the warmth in the North Pacific continues just very, very mild, as is the Atlantic. The Atlantic, though, has been warm for about almost 30 years, but the Pacific continues quite warm. So I thought, well, I'm an old guy, but I thought doesn't mean I can't work with ChatGPT. So I went on ChatGPT and logged in and said, tell me about how ENSO affects the winter weather in the US. And it actually came up with a pretty coherent discussion. I'm not going to have you read it or anything like that, but there's no nonsense. It was pretty good. And the best part was the very last line. For the most accurate and detailed forecast, it's advisable to check with local meteorological services or trusted weather sources. So this was just me doing a volley to see is there anything worth considering, and it appears to be a lot of mays and coulds and things like that in this version of the El Nino winter, but it was nothing that I found really egregious. Of course, we are getting very close to, I guess, technically the end of the hurricane season is the 30th of November. This year, quite a bit more active. The year-to-date ACE, or the accumulated cyclone energy, is 146. I think last year it was, because I did the discussion about a month earlier, I think it was only around in the 90s or 80s at that time. But the average is 104. So this year we're above average, and there's a whole host of storms, as you know, many of them having no effect at all on any land areas, which is to the benefit of those in the insurance industry. However, I think, we may not be done yet. I think we might be able to squeeze out one more Atlantic tropical cyclone, and it would be Vince if it does materialize and gets named. And this is the GFS, but if the ECMWF has the same idea that something's going to come out of the Western Caribbean and then mosey up, probably crossing Jamaica and then maybe even going between Cuba and Hispaniola around this coming weekend. So who knows? It makes no difference because this thing's going to go out into the ocean anyway and be absorbed by one of the many short waves that'll be coming through the eastern US. But it could be that we might be able to get one more cyclone out of this, one more tropical storm. Snow cover. Remember the idea, I'm doing the Snellman approach, so I'm looking big scale before we get to a smaller scale. The most recent snow analysis, at least in terms of total, was in October, even though we're at the 13th of November. And it was a little bit above normal, but not much. this is the actual from Rutgers, the snow cover as of yesterday, and ice obviously being in the purples. So it's nothing extraordinary. There's snow where you would probably expect it to be in parts of the high Rockies and the interior West.
I think I read Colorado, it's already 50% below normal snow.
Yeah, well, a good point, Rich, because Colorado would be right about here, and Utah over here. So it does look like it's not very.
I think Vail has to be snow too.
Has how many?
3.
3, yeah, well, that's not gonna make a profit out of that. The guru of snow cover in terms of its predictability for the upcoming winter is a fellow by the name of Judah Cohen. I'm not really, he has his own company now. I think it's called Verisk, Verisk. So Verisk. What's that?
I didn't know that was his company.
I think it is his company. I'm not positive, but at least that's who he works with or works for. And this is his blog from just a couple days ago, where the important thing, this is the figure that he was just working on the final number for the Eurasian snow cover compared with the long-term anomaly, but he doesn't see it as being a definitive predictor on this winter at this point. But which is kind of odd because that is kind of his ace in the hole. He claims it is a very good predictor of the upcoming winter season. So, although as he said, but is biased to a cold winter, but I think virtually all of his forecasts are biased toward a colder winter.
Well, it's all every winter before 2000 was colder than the winter we were originally having, and it was close. The trend is reversed.
Well, when he published a paper, maybe it was a decade or more ago, he had a good track record, and since then. This hasn't worked.
No, it hasn't worked.
I believe that is a reasonable sign.
Yeah, it was. He turned heads a decade ago when his Eurasian snow cover in October was a very good indicator. And actually, one of the papers he published discussed the feedback mechanism between the snow cover over a large land area like Siberia and Mongolia and that area, and how it could affect the flux of infrared radiation, into the troposphere and perhaps even into the lower stratosphere. But since then, the atmosphere must have read the paper and said, no, that's not it. So you're wrong. Of course, we have our own little mechanism nearby here, which is Lake Erie, which these are the water temperatures as of last evening. And from what I can tell, it looks like it's generally in the 50s. I picked there we go. I picked a mean. I went on the low side of 52 or so, which would be about 11 Celsius. If indeed the anticipated 850 millibar temperatures that's coming in behind this reinforcement of cool air that will traverse the state later in the afternoon today and tonight, tomorrow morning, at least in the far east end of Lake Erie, which would be the area up toward Buffalo, the 850 temperatures are going to get down to around -5, maybe a little bit lower than that. So that would give us the necessary 15 degrees C difference to be able to at least get a little bit of snow showers. But it wouldn't last for very long, and it would probably, the wind trajectory is going to be from the west or northwest, so it's not even going to be over that much of the lake. So if one were interested in lake effect snow, this would not be a good example of it, but I don't think it's out of the question either for in the wee hours of tomorrow morning and in the northwestern part of northeastern part of Lake Erie. And there were some pretty good tips written by a former Campus Weather Service past president, Dale Dacus. He was here last year for the 50th anniversary, and Dale actually wrote this paper back in the I don't remember when it was. He was at the Weather Channel at the time, but he did a really nice job of speaking about some of the important things of trajectories and fetches and things like that, as well as the important temperature differences. So there we go. So we'll momentarily get into the weather for today, and I always like to get the big picture as far as where are we starting from. Rich just came in from Arizona, right? Which is one of the few warm places in Florida in the U.S. When you look at this, the colors, obviously it's clear we're in a I think I would call it primarily a Pacific airflow. The only place yesterday that had a high temperature that was near or below freezing was in Maine, and everybody else, even the cold spots were just in the 30s in the Northeast, and only in the high elevations of the Cascades that they, like I said, it must be Stampede Pass. But otherwise, it's pretty mellow. Lots of greens, 50s, some yellows, 60s, and then a few 70s. 90s are pretty rare now. Doesn't mean it'll stay that way, but at least only the west coast of Florida, and that may just be a broken thermometer. And I guess there was an unreliable report of a 90 in Southern California, but yeah, we're in a pretty dull pattern temperature-wise across the U.S. So let me depart from this and go to the there we go. Let's actually look at the weather. This is the visible satellite imagery for the past 2.5 hours, I think it is. And when we're talking about how much cloud cover we're going to get from a front that's going to go most of the action to the north, that's pretty dull. There have been some stratocumulus, some altocumulus, I should say, and maybe a few cirrus embedded in this too, although it doesn't look like it's quite as high enough for cirrus. But this is pretty much a very dull looking front, and not much to be said about really. In the actual surface pattern, I'm going to do this. There we go. Blow it up a bit, and this is where we'll do an eye test for those in the back row. All right, what is the dew point in Williamsport? Can you read? Yeah, you can read the numbers. Good. All right. But there's a band of showers that are associated with this front, primarily in Ontario, and moving into Quebec. And there's just not much to say. The winds have turned back into the south ahead of the front, and even behind the front, we have to go way up into the other side of Lake Superior to see the winds shift back into the north, into the west, or some northwesterly component. But this precipitation is not coming our way anytime soon. The nice part about doing a discussion at this particular time is that we get to look at the new models. So, I mean, I know there are other places besides EWAL, but I was weaned on EWAL. So I'll look at this. Here's the let's look at the, I think it was 6Z. There's where there's a possibility of a little bit of lake effect. That's not much to say. But the A50 temperatures are of order of -4, -5 across that part of Lake Erie. Otherwise, tonight, compared with last night, it could be, I think, 15 degrees warmer than last night. And surprisingly, because this is where it gets confusing trying to communicate this to the public, is that a cold front's going to come through. It's going to be 15 degrees warmer tonight than last night. Because last night we were clear and calm and lots of radiation cooling. Tonight it'll probably be still relatively clear, but it will not be calm, and the air will be very well mixed as it cools off aloft. But actually, the low layers will stay relatively mild. So I think them in tonight rather than 26 at the weather station, maybe more like 36 or something of that order. And when we move ahead to during the day tomorrow, it'll be cooler because the temperature's still often going to be cooler, but and I think that the wind, which the wind has been kind of a fussy thing to forecast around here lately, because we've had some fairly windy days that I don't think were necessarily called to be so windy. But what could be, this pattern could have produced a pretty windy day, but it's kind of going to come at night. So that's why I think it won't be as cool. But tomorrow looks like a innocuous day. 21Z temperatures. Of course, the 2 meter temperatures here tend to be too low. So even though it has this only around 40 at 4 o'clock tomorrow afternoon, it's probably more likely to be in the mid 40s. But already aloft the temperature, which was, remember, there was a little pocket of -4 here. It's going to be up to around +3 or 4. So already there's warm advection going on during the day tomorrow. And the ridge axis is essentially right over us. So what breezes there are in the morning tomorrow should diminish pretty quickly. But then once again we get into our pattern where the upper levels warm up, but the low levels get cold because of having long nights now. So here we are Sunday or Wednesday morning, and everybody's below freezing, and some places will be in the mid 20s, even though the 850 temperatures are going to be +8. So a nice thermal inversion during the day or in the morning hours on Wednesday, and then it warms up. It should warm up pretty quickly, but this model I think has a hard time breaking that inversion. If it was foggy, then you could see that, and that may be what's being indicated here, right? It never gets out of the 30s around Williamsport, but I don't think we're in a particularly good regime for lots of fog at night. I mean, there'll be some of the river valleys are pretty, the water's still pretty warm, but it hasn't precipitated. I don't think we've had in the past 10 days more than 1/10 of an inch. So one needs a little bit of moisture in the low levels to be able to do that. And then this is what the end of the day Thursday. Actually, that's the end of the day Wednesday. It looks to me like the golden day of the week is going to be Thursday. Well, I guess I'm going to show it on here. I'll show it on the.
That's US.
What's that?
You get the US view day before.
Oh yeah. So you're at 84. Let me move a lot of things. Let's just reduce this a bit. Okay. This is now Thursday evening, and there's some indication that this southern wave is going to bring some relief to the drought-stricken lower Mississippi Valley, and it's going to rain a bit in Florida as well. But ahead of the next front, the thing that's barreling in from the Pacific Northwest, we should have some southerly flow, and there are some indications that at least in the mid-levels of the atmosphere, there could be some clouds sneaking in late in the day Thursday. But otherwise, it looks to me like a very, very, very nice day Thursday. Beyond that, that's good. Because I hate to look at the 6Z because 6Z tends to be goofy. It can get kind of weird, but there we have the. It's interesting that the 6Z wants to take the southern wave out of the Gulf and move it up the eastern seaboard, at least in part, and then combine its moisture with the moisture coming in from the front from the west. If this is right, and it might probably the message is correct that there'll be 2 streams of moisture, one coming in from the south and one coming in from the west. There will be some place that'll get snookered, that will miss. And it's more likely to happen just east of the mountains than it is here, I think. But places which have been dry, even though there's going to be a coastal, even though there's a front coming in from the west, may end up with, just a few hundredths of an inch of rain rather than what looks like what could be a pretty good soaking rain in parts of New England, southern New England. And then when we get to Saturday, this is just about game time. Fronts through, the low spinning up. It does look a bit breezy. The flow is somewhat aligned, west-northwest at high levels, and the surface flow looks kind of westerly or west-northwesterly also. And the upper levels are cold, so it should be pretty chilly. Temperature is probably not getting much above the low 40s, if that. So, and beyond that, it's just a progression of waves from the west, some of which are going kerplunk into the southern plains, some of which will march eastward, but no wild storms, at least seem to be on the horizon, at least with the GFS. So, and Rich, as far as the snows in Colorado, I guess there could be some snow here with this wave that goes dropping into the south, but it looks like it's going to be more into New Mexico.
It's funny, the 60 EC GFS had the snow big snow in New Mexico, hardly anything in Colorado. But the 0 is the EC and the GFS had the snow in Colorado.
Yeah. It probably will snow in Colorado, is what I would guess. I think the 60 is.
They have 2 shots. I mean, really long. They have 2 shots. Like right before Thanksgiving.
Yeah, and I'll be flying back from Colorado here, 18C on the, and I think at that point, the waves already passed. So.
What day you fly back?
Next Monday, not 2 weeks from today. So, yeah. Is there any other stuff anybody wants to look at here before I kind of summarize things?
What do the models say Thanksgiving's gonna be like here? If you assume the model is correct?
Yeah, it's well, we're getting a close brush with a southern wave, but it looks like it stays south of us. Here it is. Oh, pardon me. This is 1 o'clock in the afternoon on Thanksgiving Day. Assuming the timing's right, of course, getting these things kicked out, is arguable. But it looks dry for the most part. So, and also looks like as far as the mass exodus that will occur here on this weekend, the rain should be gone by Saturday morning. So
Is it cold in this one? Because the EC actually showed like some mountain snows in Pennsylvania.
Here, yeah, it's interesting, isn't it? Because the question is,
It wasn't a lot.
no, and that's dependent upon what does the western front slow down enough, and the coastal come up to keep the moisture. Yeah, I don't know. Possible. Rich's point is well taken here. Here's the this is.
I guess they called it. What they call it? EPS on the page I use. This is European ensemble.
Yeah, there's just marginally enough cold air to be able to 540 thickness, and the 0 line at 850 is marching into northwestern Pennsylvania. I don't think there'd be anything here. I don't guess it's not.
It showed it kind of
Yeah.
probably not much.
Yeah. So
You have a question with that?
yes, Marissa, sorry.
So this may be a dumb question. There's fires burning in the southeast right now. I don't know if you're aware of that. I'm curious, I guess it depends on cloud cover at the end of the week. Do you think we'll see any of that smoke once we get that southwesterly flow going again?
Well, I think it's possible, but I think I get the impression that there won't be a strong enough wind to bring it up. See, notice the ridge axis. Here we are. Wednesday is right down the Piedmont, so there's going to be a lack of wind there. And then, see, it would have to come around the back side, so to speak, up through the Ohio Valley, Tennessee Valley. I don't think it's out of the question, but I think I think it would be unlikely, but not impossible, so. Yeah, good point though, that, since we are all, pretty sensitive now to the whole idea of fires and smoke and the dangers therein. So to summarize, I think there's a glancing blow of chilly air tonight and tomorrow. Winds diminish quickly, if overnight or during the early morning hours tomorrow, so it's a much calmer afternoon. Frosty cold mornings, and milder afternoons Wednesday and Thursday. It turns cloudy by Friday with showers into early Saturday, brisk colder. I think it is colder than normal on Saturday. I think there's still some limited sun. I think that there's enough of a shortwave ridge to come in that might reduce that. And maybe, as John was pointing out, if there is a southern branch wave, I guess if it comes far enough north, it could bring some sleety rain here before Thanksgiving. So let me conclude with this lovely poem. No sun, no moon, no morn, no noon, no dawn, no dusk, no proper time of day, no warmth, no cheerfulness, no healthful ease, no comfortable feel in any member, no shade, no shine, no butterflies, no bees, no fruits, no flowers, no leaves, no birds. November. So that was small.
That was a cheerful.
We did that. That was a feature on Weather, like 40 plus years ago. So,
Yeah.
yes, sir.
I'm just curious, this is unrelated, which is why I waited. And you're the person that might know this without having to look anything up. We're running out of time in November for something interesting happens, a lot of precipitation. I'm just curious if you know if a burgeoning El Nino is actually a good analog around here for a dry November. Because unless something interesting starts happening, this could be very dry November around here, barring any news. I wasn't sure if you knew.
No, I don't know for sure. I don't know the answer to that. I know in the mean for DJF, yes, western half of Pennsylvania, quite dry. And that could include us, but in November, I don't know. For those of you that are curious, I threw this in myself. I was recently in the Middle East, and these are some pictures of my wife and I, and some of my relatives too. But this picture here, I'm looking over. I couldn't get into. I was supposed to go to Israel. I was in Egypt and Jordan, but a problem arose in Gaza. That prevented me from going to Israel. This is, I'm on top of Mount Nebo. And if you know from your Sunday school classes about the story of Moses, is that Moses, who led the Israelites out of Egypt up to the promised land, and then God said to him, he took him on top of Mount Nebo and said, there it is. That's what you're seeing behind me. That's the promised land. That's Israel. The Jordan Valley and actually Lake of Galilee is up here, and the other way is Dead Sea and so on. I could see Jerusalem and I could see Jericho. They said you don't go any further. So it was a Mount Nebo experience for me. I got to see Israel, but I didn't get to go in because the borders were closed. This is Mount Sinai up there. This is me at the Dead Sea, which is kind of a wild place. It's really wacky. It's over 1,000. Jordan side. Yeah. This is my wife and I with the Nile River behind us. We were buying some of the local wear, my brother-in-law and sister-in-law and our guide. And this is Giza, the last surviving the 7 wonders of the ancient world. So the other ones have all been destroyed or lost, or like the Hanging Gardens of Babylon are gone too. So anyway, that's just a PS.
I thought you went to Long Island about Sunday, Jericho.
Yeah, really. Yeah. Yeah. I was. It was a different Jericho. Yeah, and a different Babylon too. Yeah. So anyway, any comments, questions? If not, then thank you for showing up. Appreciate it. I'll let you log off, okay?
Thanks again.
Sure.
Appreciate it. Good talk.